guys, welcome to Revolver's Fan First podcast, where we go deep with artists into their experience as a fan, a lifelong fan, because basically all artists were fans first, and that's just facts. So Reba, what was the first band you got really into as a kid?
Hard to say always, but from my memories, I would say, probably Minor Threat was one of the first ones that I really got into and connected with. Basically, I met Jamie, who's obviously singer of our band, and his dad had gotten him into punk. So then me and Jamie became friends because I played guitar, me in sixth grade, like, hey, I play guitar, sort of. He played drums, but he was actually pretty good. So we would just jam and he would show me punk bands and whatnot. So yeah, I got into that shit, Minor Threat and Operation Ivy, Rancid, and Black Flag, shit like that. That was the first step.
It's an important step. Were you guys into like the ethos of it as well? Like the whole, like straight edge?
Yeah, 100%.
Because there's so much more to it, I guess, than just the music, right? Like,
yeah, that's kind of why it's always hard to tell someone like a band I connected with first the most. It's like, yeah, I connected with the bands and the music, but it's like the reason I liked that shit was not because the music was like good. It was because of the shows we went to together and because it gave me a reason to connect with people and my friends, and it was shit that we could actually play and learn. I could play with Jamie and learn the songs, and you could just jam it out, and there's an energy to it, and all the reasons that I think everyone would connects with punk music so young, so yeah, it's definitely more about the ethos.
I think Henry Rollins said that. He's like, I loved all those big rock bands and back in his sort of era, but he's like, when I heard the Ramones, I'm like, I could play that. That's accessible. That's something I can learn as a kid. And okay, so Pittsburgh Pride is the thing. You guys are Pittsburgh kids and stuff. What was your scene like? Like what was kind of how did that affect who you are as musicians growing up in a place like that?
It was just it was constant. There was always stuff going on. There was always stuff in different pockets going on. And there would be periods of time, like when we were younger, I think even a lot of different styles were kind of meshed together. So we would go to a show with like a punk band, a hardcore band, a noise band, crust band, and even maybe some sort of weird garage emo band. And they would all be playing one show. And I think even when we started our band, that kind of started happening more and more because the more young kids would be there, the more that would happen. And the scene goes through phases. It's definitely in a different phase now than it is when I was a kid growing up there, but we had a lot of people when we were going to shows when we were like 15, really going to a lot of shows. There was all the dudes in their 20s who were kind of taking us in and showing us the ropes and showing us all the kind of music to listen to, and it's just really diverse and inclusive, I would say, for the most part, and heavy and weird. Like there wasn't a lot of it wasn't like the bands that the general hardcore scene would necessarily be popular in Pittsburgh. Like you could have someone who normally would have maybe a 300 person draw somewhere in Philly or something and would have 80 person draw in Pittsburgh, but at the same time the energy of the show would be so intense just because those 80 people were just hyped. It was just energy. Yeah.
I love that you guys, that people were inclusive. That's how I got into hardcore. I had a friend who was in a grindcore band. He's like, okay, this, then this, then this. Was that Jamie's dad, or did you guys kind of do it yourself? Because I feel like there's this missing link talking about getting into bands between people like, oh, I went to the record store and now I got into the internet. I feel like that era, in the 2000s and stuff, we don't really talk. I mean, the internet was around, obviously, but how did you guys work through bands and stuff?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Basically, I think what happened is because of the internet age was kind of just beginning in terms of music, I would say. It's like we would download shit, we would dig around on blogs, but you kind of still have to know what you were looking for. So you go to the CD store all the time. That was half the things, and record stores, and mostly just people telling us what to listen to. And what happens is it's because you're mostly getting the music from your old heads or whatever, people who are local, that creates a unique kind of sound that's just based on whatever people like in your area. So that was kind of what we started with. We came into punk, started learning about hardcore and a little bit about metal, but not a lot. And we just kind of made our own sound that was mostly a mesh of local shit. And then not until later, you know, when we really got out of our bubble and started doing more touring, and when the internet started becoming a real thing and YouTube and all that, then it was kind of like, oh, the floodgates open, and we already knew about music from an underground level a lot, but there's shit that we had just never heard of just because it wasn't on the radio in Pittsburgh, or we didn't really listen to the radio anyway. It's just like, there's just so many fucking bands out there that it's like, you know, we were all born in like 92, 93 or whatever. So that was kind of at the tail end of whenever a lot of the bigger metal bands were, you know, doing their shit in those years when we were kids, right? So we weren't going to shows yet. So we didn't really find out about that until later. But yeah, I guess that's a very roundabout way of explaining that. But yeah, kind of just started with the local sound.
Yeah,
that's where it began.
You've got a super distinctive sound, and I feel like that was something, and that's something that on a like scale has been lost a bit in the modern age, because everyone's kind of exposed to this monoculture, and it's less like you hear what's around you, and that's super unique, and it's a certain kind of a mix, which I think it shows in your music, which is cool. I mean, what was the first show you and Jamie went to? Can you remember that, or is it kind of a...
I mean, together we might have hit probably just like Warped Tour or something is my guess, but it was kind of like that world of shows. And then there was a world of shows like in Pittsburgh at like Mr. Roboto Project and like Games and that, and like local venues. And in terms of like, you know, when we were in like 6th grade, our first show was probably like Warped Tour, or we might have gone to Cleveland to go see somebody together. And his parents were also just super down before, you know, when we were whatever 12 years old, his family would take me with him to shows and stuff, and we would just go see shows.
That's awesome. So your parents were playing goth bands, I hear. Brandon was saying your parents were playing goth bands in the house, like a bit of Depeche Mode.
A couple. Yeah. It's like weird. They like that shit. Like my dad loves The Cure, and like my mom always had Depeche Mode on, but it's not like they were really aware of the culture around any of it. They just liked it. And only recently, like my dad's been more into the specifics. Like he'll ask me to trade him music, you know, or whatever. We'll do that. We'll actually talk about it. But like when I was a kid, it was just kind of on. I don't know. Is it they're music fans, but they're not like music culture aware. I think Jamie's family was a little more aware of the culture just because they are a lot younger and grew up in Chicago and stuff. So it was a different thing, but all that kind of meshed together. And we just started so young that it was like you could just kind of learn to like whatever had energy, because you're like a blank slate almost. It's just like whatever had that energy is like what we were attached to. So
it's really interesting that kind of transcends the music, and it is more about the culture and the energy. And I feel like that's kind of a universal thing, especially for bands. And it's kind of that force is kind of the thing that made you be a musician kind of thing. Like, you know, is that something you guys wanted to make that energy yourselves kind of thing?
100%. Yeah, for sure. That was like the most satisfying aspect, is whenever we would get in a room, and you know, when we met Eric and we started doing it as a band, and the feeling of making that energy yourself, it starts to get you like analyzing what you actually like, trying to figure out what you actually like musically. And that's, I think, when the band really started, was when we were like started to figure out what we liked musically, you know, as opposed to just the energy, though the energy was, you know, the real root of everything. And it's kind of like what people thought of when they thought of Code Orange Kids, you know, when we were really young and doing that stuff. They thought of us as being like that energetic young kids who just didn't know what they wanted to sound like yet, but had this energy and this vibe that just, I think it just got people excited, you know, and made people want to get together and play shows together. And we would bring all these little dorky kids, you know, to our shows, and like all our friends would come. And just when you're in a smaller city and it's punk music, hardcore music, it's like, one band having a lot of friends and bringing all their friends to a show can make or break the scene. It's like if those kids come to the show, it's like that means the shows can happen. They can be booked, like enough people pay and buy merch, whatever. Without that, like a scene can fall apart like that. It's so easy. So I think just that youthful energy and just the fact that people showed up, it was just enough to kind of keep it going.
That's cool. Your mate supported you guys are clearly ambitious. Like that's not like a deniable thing. Like you guys have done some stuff that's gotten bigger and bigger. You worked with big producers, you know, on the label, you guys have kind of had a whole thing. Were you ambitious when you're in that room? Like, did you guys want to keep going and going and going?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, our definition of that has obviously changed a whole lot as we've learned, how things really are. But yeah, I mean, the goals then were big at the time. We had giant goals. We wanted to play a bunch of shows. We wanted to open for like our favorite bands. We wanted to do anything to make that happen.
What were
I
they?
mean, I remember opening for the Misfits. That was a big deal. That was a huge deal. Absolutely loved the Misfits, and just getting to do stuff like that. Or I mean, even like this, the band Anti-Flag when we were kids, like we thought of them as like kind of the biggest Pittsburgh band, because that was really, there wasn't a lot of bands from Pittsburgh that got a lot of steam and traction and actually toured, and they were one of them. So getting to play with them when we were kids was pretty awesome. And and just like we would practice a hell of a lot. We practiced like every night after school, pretty much whenever we could, and there was just some sort of draw to it, because it was like having fun, but you also had a goal and you were getting better. I think we all just had that in common. And people would jump in the band, jump out, but the core people were always there because we had that same common ground of ambition, and we still do. Obviously, as far as we're still doing it. If we didn't, we just wouldn't even do it. So.
Well, especially, I mean, it's been a pretty full-on time the last year. I know for everyone, we've been grounded. They basically locked the borders here for the last year and a half. So it's we miss American rock and roll a lot. Like it's been a long time, you guys, since you've been around, and it's not an easy slog. All of that. I'm curious, were there bands you guys didn't agree on? Did you ever have like fights of like, dude, this is amazing, what are you talking about, come on, get people on board? Because I feel like most bands like have different like, and that can be that kind of tension can come, like really good shit can come out of.
And it's like kind of hard to remember back a while. I mean, I feel like it was weird because we actually had kind of a like bandwagon energy. Weirdly, it's like I trusted Jamie, and like when he would show me stuff, like I feel like it would just like, even if I maybe didn't like it at the time, I just trusted him and I gave it time. And there was definitely stuff that was maybe, probably more on like the emo end, if anything, that I liked that he didn't like. But we still all both loved that shit too. We started another band that was, all that shit. So we had a lot of common ground. I mean, I think it's just that we both hear different things in the music and like different things about the music. So even though we like a lot of the same shit, we pull different in very, very different ways from it. And I mean, now there's obviously tons of stuff that I like that he doesn't, and vice versa. But I guess we just kind of both appreciate music, and we have the same general taste for like what's legit and what's not. And for the most part, if something's legit, I can kind of find a way to love it, even if it's a style that maybe, is like out of my normal wheelhouse. And
what would you define as legit? Like people who are like mean it, like people who are.
I mean, I think it's just something like
that's interesting.
Certain people can hear and certain people can, and I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I can hear it whenever a band means what they're doing. And when they don't, and it's not like what they're doing isn't maybe good for them anyway. It's not like it doesn't matter to them. It's just like there's a certain kind of rawness and a certain kind of passion that you can hear if you're that type of person who does music for that same reason. And some people do music for different reasons, but that's just the shit that I like, the shit that has that kind of rawness. And
and
I think you can hear that for sure.
And you guys have that as well. Like it's funny, I was listening to 9 Inch Nails Downward Spiral live in '94, and you can hear that guy was not having a good time. Like he was not like, he didn't have a home to live in. He was forlorn like that, and I feel like, you guys share that. And I think what's really interesting is, and I've been thinking about this a lot, right? Like go back to like Throbbing Gristle, and like their whole idea was like, well, we want to put the sounds that are around us in this industrial town into our music, because this is the stuff we're hearing. Like we're not hearing beautiful stuff. We're hearing like, you get the idea. And on some level, like digital and a lot of electronic sounds are actually more natural to us as human beings in the modern world, where, we all hear a million, but there's no way I'm not going to sound weird saying this. But I feel like you guys kind of bring a really earthy thing to that. What did you ever like think about sounds as a kid beyond music, like stuff that you were into listening that was different, like films or other kinds of stuff that kind of internalized when you were kids? That was a really convoluted way to ask that question.
No, I understand. I understand what you mean for sure. I mean, I think, you know, Eric, for example, Shade, our keyboard guy, like he definitely got a lot of that through films, and he would just always be spending all of his time watching movies and stuff. But for me, it's kind of more of a like thing that I learned through playing guitar and playing with pedals. And, you know, when we were young, like we just started getting into pedals and got into them really early and started looping weird shit and making weird little transitions and playing with feedback. And I think that kind of was our real first start at learning ways to make melody that was not just with an instrument. And then as we grew older and learned how to use the software, that's when we kind of started to gain an understanding of, you know, in the modern world, how much there is to do with that. And I think that's exactly why, you know, at least I hope that we can have a more grounded version of that doesn't just feel like a layer on top. You know, it kind of feels like it's part of the band, because it really has been a part of a band since the beginning. We've just kind of found a different way to hone the skill, as opposed to it being kind of a messy version. But, you know, that's kind of why I love pedals so much and still love pedals. It's like, even if they're not the best way to get the final product, it's the exploration aspect is kind of what we started with. And that's how we kind of started hearing those sounds that we then found another way to actually create later on. But
it's cool to be surprised. There's a lot of templates, man. There's a lot of templates in this music. There's a lot of people who stick to the template, and you're like, yeah, this is good, and I'm glad. But like you plugged that shit. That could have been a plug-in. Like this whole song could have been a plug-in, and it's always exciting to like hear it when when that kind of stuff kind of comes through. So and you said Code Orange does live in a very dark psychological horror movie world, but at the same time it shows the extremes of that in all facets: extreme light, dark, sadness, anger, raw, just every aspect of the human emotional spectrum. And I guess it's kind of like a personal question, but did you use music making or listening to process emotion when you were a kid and now? And how does that, as a fan and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I think it was just the action of us all being in a room together, and even going through the process of writing songs can be intense and difficult when you're, you know, with other people. And just the act of being in a band puts you through kind of a ringer of like learning how to talk about the stuff, which is a huge part of it. It's like just the action of getting something from in your head, in their head, and all putting it together in a pot and making something out of it, and then getting to play that. It's like something about that process. It's really hard to put into words, but I just think that, you know, puts you through something. And now it's a bit different of a process, but I still feel that same way whenever any idea comes to fruition. And that's like what keeps me going with it. And even with all the elements of, you know, the music industry and this and that I hate with my whole being, it's like you still have that at the core of it. You know, like writing the song, thinking of an idea, getting it actually out of your system, and, you know, whether that be, you know, planning it out and having a specific vision for something and then creating it, or whether it be just improvising and just picking up the guitar one day, and then that happens to be the day you think of some riff or some song or some melody or whatever that you then end up being really connected to, you know, the next day.
Well, you guys, I'm too curious not to ask, but I thought it was really, I saw that picture of you guys and Billy Corgan in the studio, and I thought what's really cool about you two is you guys both have so many ideas, and, you know, that dude has always been so ambitious. And I thought, holy shit, like what's going to happen there? Like how did you guys link up? Because I imagine that dude's a fan of yours, talking about fandom.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can't talk about it too much because I don't like giving stuff away. But I figured that. Yeah, I mean, he just you know, ever since the Smashing Pumpkins have came back and are being more active and everything, he had kind of heard of our band name through different people, and he just kind of saw something special in it. So we just ended up talking, and, you know, I think we connected via just having similar ways of thinking about music. And obviously he's way more seasoned and successful, so he has so many ways of thinking about songwriting and songs, and can verbalize all of that. And that's something that takes a lot of work and effort. It's like, you know, there can be a person who, you know, knows what they want in their head and can maybe create it on their own, but being able to actually verbalize why and like how to do it and what the reasoning is, and, taking a song from step zero and going through it and having, just being able to verbalize what takes it there is definitely something that takes a lot of practice. So
no, look,
he has that.
It's exciting to see, I'm excited to see what you guys do next. Well, and I figure we're not going to wait that long. We're not going to wait the whole time that it took between the last two, I would imagine. I mean,
I hope not. I mean, everything's so unpredictable at all times, but we're pushing, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. So look, and I'm curious, and musicians probably know this, but when you start writing songs, do you look to other songs and go, well, it needs to have this part and this part and this part? Or when you started, and how you write songs changed over that time? And I guess when you say we're done, does it take you a lot longer with the song now to go, okay, it's done?
Yeah, it does take longer for sure, but it's just such a hard, long-winded thing to explain, I guess, but no, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, each person in our band, I think, thinks about it a little bit differently, and I think that's why it works. I've definitely more nowadays probably tried to analyze a little more closely. Sometimes I have the kind of internal battle where it's do I analyze and do I really try to think about why this should be better, or do I just go with flow and do what I would do naturally? Because sometimes that does create a better result too. So I think it just depends on the song. And I mean, when we were younger, we definitely would. We would have influences, but it wouldn't necessarily be discussed. Sometimes, when writing a specific song, sometimes it would just be kind of clear because we all hang out and talk and listen to music together, and it's just clear what the influences are. But I think nowadays, to push our envelope, we try to really open the box and maybe find something as a starting point of maybe we should write a song with this vibe,
Yeah.
I definitely don't think we often get super specific about part to part, other than referencing maybe our own songs. I mean, we do that a lot, trying to change the formula from one song to the next, or say, okay, listening to Underneath now, it's what do we feel was kind of missing in the flow of the songs in that record, and what do we want to take it? Where do you want to take it to this time? Learning from your own stuff, I think that helps keep it kind of in your wheelhouse and your sound, and just makes it so you can grow on what you've done. But there's a lot of ways to think about it.
The acoustic thing is nuts. Doing that live, it just, I was so blown away. I was just wow, this is just it. Yeah, just you get to hear you guys, and you nailed Down in a Hole, and that that you. Alice in Chains Unplugged is in, I've watched that 3,000 times because it's the greatest. It's the greatest. There's not a better thing. And you guys, so it's definitely in the canon of that kind of stuff. What was that experience like? And were you a big fan of that kind of music? I mean, and it's just very briefly, I think it's funny that people say use the word grunge sometimes to talk about you guys, but I feel like it's just because that was music that meant it. That was music that was legit, and it was raw, and there was a lot to it, and that was kind of the antithesis to that kind of corporate, Motley Crue kind of garbage that was popular at the time. And then it was oh, this is means something. And I feel like that's the link. Well, yeah, I mean, most of us got into music like that way after it happened, our generation or whatever. None of us we weren't around to go to a show. But what's your relationship with that kind of style of music?
I mean, I love it. Absolutely love it. I definitely was one of those things that I think hit me at a certain time in my life when I needed it, and then that's when that type of thing has such an effect. It's it just came out of nowhere for me. I didn't see it coming. I already had loved so much stuff. And then I find something now, whenever, I don't know how long ago it's been, but when I first listened to Alice in Chains and whatnot, and actually fell in love with it, it's I had heard them before, but it didn't click with me until a certain time in my life. And then it's every time you discover something new, even now being 27, and I know that's young to some people, but to me it feels old. So it's I'll find new shit that I love, and it's an awakening almost. It's holy shit, I can still find something new or way old that I've fallen in love with. And that definitely happened with them, and Nirvana and fucking Soundgarden, and all that kind of realm of shit. And with Alice in Chains specifically, I mean, just Jerry Cantrell and Lane and the way that they play and sing, it's just something about that clicked with me, and that it's they had so much technique, but they had such an ability, technical ability, that they were able to then turn their technique brain off and just play flow and just, you know, be musical. And I think that's always the ultimate goal. And
Yeah.
that they had amazing songs and amazing songwriting skills. And those are just,
Yeah.
to me, like 3 of the most important pieces of the formula to creating an amazing band. So
Well,
it just clicked with me, I guess.
What's another record that you've kind of fallen in love with that felt like an awakening in like your modern life? Because I just realized I've spoken to you about what you're like as a kid, but you're still a musician and you're still listening to stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, shit, so many things. Like, I mean, when we first started getting into hardcore, hearing Earth Crisis and Hatebreed, I mean, Satisfaction and Firestorm and all that. It's like that. Those were probably the first heavy bands that I was like, holy shit, I didn't know like that I could connect with this world so much. And just the guitars and the anger, but there's still a song underneath all of that that was easy to understand as a young person. And
heavy metal, just realized, haven't spoken to you about it. Yeah, how?
That's what I'm saying. There's a million things. You could talk about it forever. Never ends.
Half an hour to get to heavy metal. It's really funny. Like growing up with like punk dudes and like grindcore dudes, they were, when I was interviewing metal bands years and years ago, there were like bands that they were like, yeah, and there were bands that were like, lame. Was it quite pointed in your scene that like, this is an okay heavy metal band, these guys are legit, these guys suck? Or was it a shared thing?
I'm sure there was some of that. I think it actually really, we got into heavy metal more when we were starting to tour and we were barely even home. And a lot, I mean, I know we started getting a lot more into metal after meeting, just meeting people on the road and seeing different shit that other people in other cities were into. And there's obviously people in Pittsburgh that are influenced by heavy metal, but I guess it just, the timing is just always some random timing shit where it just happened at a certain time later. And then we started getting into a lot of Roadrunner era stuff. And there's definitely shit I think is lame and that people in Pittsburgh think is lame, but awesome. I don't know, that shit, I'm just not thinking about it right now for some reason. All I can think about what I like. So plus, I'm not trying to hate, but no, I love the heavy metal that has, it's like that same thing I described with Alice in Chains. It's like has the technical aspect, and you can, like, that's kind of a trait of a lot of heavy metal.
Yep.
But at the same time, like using it in a free kind of way and using it in a unique way. It's like fucking Pantera obviously are some of the most amazing technical musicians of all time in metal history ever, maybe the best. So, but the way that they use that skill is just so free, and just the way that, Diamond, fucking the boys all just play together and have this groove. It's like that's just something that they had because they played together their whole lives. And it's more than just someone sitting at a computer and playing a riff and gritting in, sticking drums on it. And like I've never been super into that particular style of heavy metal, with like death metal stuff that's like really gritted. And some people do love that, but I've just been more drawn to the groovy elements of metal, and that's just something special about it to me. So
I feel like they're kind of there's some interesting like parallels with that, in like they were kind of like the sound of like like a Texas sound, when at the time it was like LA, New York, and like Seattle, and they were just like, nah, this is what we sound like, and exactly like this. And
just being unabashful, and being unabashful about your local sound and the way that it has shaped you is, if you can be the best version of that, then you will be appreciated by everyone.
And it's interesting, like listening to stuff and going, well, I can do better. Like I read this great interview with Rex where he's talking about like when the Black Album came out, and that was before they did Vulgar Display of Power, and they're like, okay, they're going down that path, we're going to go down this path, and we've got to like fight the flag for being that kind of thing. Have you ever like heard something and gone, whoa, okay, I'm going to take a different path, or this is going to change the way we do this next thing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always try to do that. I mean, even just like, when Dom joined the band, before or underneath or before forever or whenever the hell he joined, don't remember, but he was way more into metal, and he grew up way more into metal and Metallica and stuff. And I hadn't really ever fallen in love with Metallica yet. Just wasn't the time, right? But
Yeah.
him coming in, him bringing all these new fresh influences is like, oh holy shit, like we could bring this in this kind of way. And I started legitimately getting into the shit, like getting obsessed, and then it just naturally weaves its way in. So kind of just being aware, I guess, of making sure that I have new fresh influences coming in, whether that be from another person who's my friend, or from someone I meet on tour, or from another band on tour, or bands we tour with. And
Yeah.
then there's always the internet if you really get stuck, or documentaries. And sometimes I find even watching documentaries and watching, you know, pieces on bands that I maybe didn't care about before actually makes me connect with them more and, you know,
Yeah.
get into it. And then when you really love something and like listen to it a fuck ton, you don't even have to think about, I don't have to think about it anyways. It just kind of seeps into the music.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what keeps it fresh.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're a shredded guitar player. Like you're an awesome fucking, you're not to like, you know, but you are an awesome, you got a signature guitar. Like, I'm sorry. You have to be
thanks.
like a badass guitar player to do that. And you played flute, right? And then bass and then guitar. Tell us
Very
about
young,
like
yes.
that. Yeah. Tell us about that thing. Like, were you mad into classical music? You're like, I love this flautist. Let's do this. Probably not.
I was not like a fan. I mean, again, what I loved is the same kind of idea. It's like what I loved was the mood that was created when I played, and how I felt when I played, and when I felt like I was playing well and freely. That was what I was drawn to. And I honestly really kind of hated the other elements of it. And that's, I think, why I chose the path I chose. But I still, you know, I learned a lot in the process. Obviously, I learned about, you know, work ethic, and I learned about a lot of, you know, music theory stuff that just through force of learning scales when I was young, I just kind of, you know, never forgot it. But really just the energy of playing music, and that's just like how I happened to start. And it made me realize how amazing it feels when you play a piece that's emotional. And it's not like I'm just necessarily sitting around listening to classical music. As a kid, I mean, I was listening to rock and I was listening to punk, but I still had that real attachment with playing and playing music. And I think that just ended up transferring to something that was a little more in my personality and that fit with my demeanor, you know, as opposed to where I started.
Why bass?
But I think it was kind of random, honestly. I thought it was cool. I thought it sounded cool. And you know, me and Jamie went to school together when we were little kids, as I said, and he was playing drums, and
that makes sense.
I don't know, it just happened. I started playing bass, and then we would play in jazz bands together, and I'd be playing bass with him, and sometimes I'd be playing flute. And you know, I kind of was playing guitar at the same time. And then oh shit, I'm getting a call. End decline.
There we go.
All right, I'm back.
Oh, good.
Anyways. But yeah, I mean, it just all happened so fast. It's hard to even really like think like, why did I do it? I mean, I don't know. A guitar was sitting around in my house. I picked it up one time with my sisters, learned it. I think really just the friendship aspect, you know, combined with, again, like the feeling of playing something that like I'm making the sound. I'm the like pissed off, and I'm feeling it when I'm playing it, and just being young and not really understanding that, but just knowing that it was addictive, I guess. And just the fact that it was addictive kept me coming back. So when you don't have drugs and you don't have parties, and it's like, well, you might as well just keep playing music. So.
This is true. And like, okay, so we talked about like Dime briefly. Tell us about some guitar players that you kind of look to and think are interesting and do things a bit differently.
Shit, I mean,
there's a lot of guitar players, man. Like, I get it. Like, there's a lot.
It's just weird with me because I don't think about that, I guess, in the same way as some people do. I don't know if it's because I'm a chick, and I maybe like, if there were other chicks playing guitar, maybe I would have looked to them like, what did they do? But it's like, I didn't have the same kind of connection when I was younger with any particular players. It was more of just like the music in general. And I mean, later on, for sure, like Jerry Cantrell and Dime, as I said, were huge influences. And when I started actually learning to do things properly. But at the time when I was younger, it was really just like bouncing off my friends. And I mean, Eric used to play guitar in the band, and you know, I would learn a lot from him, and we would kind of just trade tricks and stuff. And then, you know, another dude was in our band who isn't and hasn't been forever, but when we were kids, and I would learn stuff from him and learn things from people in the local scene, and then when Dom joined the band, that influenced me a lot, and we trade secrets and tricks and stuff. And I just find that for me, like really being close to someone else and playing with someone else in the room and just trying and experimenting and finding ways that sound good to me has always been just it just made more sense, I guess. With singing, it's a little bit different. I think it's easier maybe with singing to kind of open the box that way, but I don't know. I mean, there's other things, other people. It's just always hard to kind of think, like, it's like nothing really pops in my head when I think what guitar players are my influences when I was young. It's like there wasn't really anything specific. It was just the instrument. That's definitely.
It is worth mentioning. As I was talking to Shauna from a Baltimore band called War on Women. We're talking about how one of the reasons why not as many women get involved in music is they don't get to see it as much. And we've got a mad dude problem. I worked on a music festival for 5 years, and I think I saw 18 women in the course of that on that bill, which was kind of ridiculous. And I don't even have words. I mean, what was it? Did you see it, or did you need to see it? And what was it like? I mean, I can relate to being in such a dude world that it's ridiculous. But like, what was it? Did you ever feel, I mean, did you always, I don't know. What was that experience like for you? Like looking at it?
I mean, it was fine. It was just kind of like, I kind of had to find my own path, I guess. And I think that's just why it wasn't the same trajectory as like many, current like popular guitar players, I guess, or whatever. Just people, sometimes connect with someone specific or a specific player or this or that. I just didn't. I mean, it's like there's people who have influenced me along the way, but I've never had some specific goal or hero in terms of a musician. And I think part of that is because of, lack of representation, but I don't think that that's a bad thing necessarily. It just was my path, and that's okay. And now I can find that in whoever, now that I have my own way of playing, and I can still grow and learn from people, and they don't have to be my musical heroes. But I mean, my best friends in this band are my only real musical heroes, I would say, just because we've grown together and bounced off each other so much. And that's ideal in my mind. So.
It must be cool seeing everyone develop like that. Like, it must be cool kind of what, having to share that. And I think I love it when bands stay together for this long. It's like Converge, like they've been together for, like, that core of the band have been together so long. Kind of, they've got like a musical shorthand. And actually Kurt seems like a fan. Like Kurt Ballou, he's like a huge music fan. How did
I mean, he was definitely an inspiration to me along the way too. 100%. Doing our first record with him.
Did you bring references? What kind of references did you bring? Did you bring references? Did he? How did that kind of happen? Because that's like a huge moment that, like, you guys kind of working together on that album. Because it's like, I was listening to that album again yesterday, and I was like, it's solid, man. Like, you did it's not surprising you guys were embraced by everyone, like,
thanks.
It's killer. It holds up.
He just gets, I think he knew where we were coming from before, without even saying anything, because he just kind of grew up with a similar, like, he's older than us, so he kind of had seen that stuff from a different perspective. Like 90s metalcore and stuff like that. But I know he understood that we were coming from it from a younger perspective that was different, and we had a different appreciation for it. So he got that, and he was able to therefore, make our sound work, and just make it sound huge, and make it click. And with the timing of making, I Am King with him, I think especially that record, it just we didn't need to say too much. We, gave him the general vibe, but really playing the songs for him, and us being confident in what we were doing, and being vocal about what the tones needed to be, and pushing it and getting it there. That was just what needed to happen. And I think he was able to kind of take it home, and he knew what to do with us, and he knew what to not mess with, what to mess with, where to push us. And at the time, for what we needed, that was perfect, I think.
What's like the artistry and stuff? It's pretty, I suppose that's like the essence of it. Okay, side note, This Is Hardcore, that festival in Philadelphia. I've heard some pretty, I'm like, oh, I want to go out and shoot it. They're like, Christina, you'd be destroyed. You need to like have like a cage around your camera gear. It's not going to happen.
No,
like,
no, you can do it.
Yeah, they're like,
don't listen to those people.
How to rough and tumble. Don't shut up. Like, how did playing like shows like, was that, because I know you guys played like a significant, like that people talk about around that like ish time. What was that experience like, and how did that kind of affect the way you saw yourself in that world? Yeah.
I mean, it definitely affected us a lot. We had, at the time, that was one of those things. It was like when we were really young and before we ever played This Is Hardcore, that was like one of those goals and ambitions that we had. But until we moved to Philadelphia and really met those people and got into that scene, we just didn't know how we would crack it. So, because we loved hardcore, we were hardcore kids, punk kids, but we didn't have the same perspectives as the bulk of the hardcore scene did in terms of like musically, and we had songs singing on it and had weird loops and all this shit that people in the hardcore scene generally wouldn't understand, but there was always like a certain pocket of people that just knew that could feel the energy that was, relatable in terms of the rest of hardcore. And when Joe finally put us on the fest, we kind of, we played at like noon and no one saw us, but just the fact that we played and like met everyone and, there just then became that relationship. And then, from there on, it kind of was like, it was almost like, oh, this is where Code Orange is at based on kind of when at This Is Hardcore. It was like that big of a deal at the time. And it was just a sick thing to look forward to. And
oh man,
it just definitely helped push us, so and Sonny just documenting it all. And
Sonny's a total boss. He came out to Australia and I shot with him on Invasion Fest, which is like a thing they did in Australia Day. So Indigenous people in this country call Australia Day, which is like the Invasion Day. So and it was really cool to see him in action. And like, just side note, but he's like a significant person in chronicling all these moments, I think, and should get a shout out. And so it's like, I'm glad. I mean, I think you guys have always brought something different. I mean, just realized I haven't actually looked at my questions in about like half an hour. So what did you guys want to, I mean, let's come back to the present day. I mean, Forever was pretty ape shit. I mean, in terms of response, like
that's not even present day. That's at this point.
No, that's like
age old.
4 or 5 years ago. 4 or 5, underneath. What?
Don't ask me. I don't know.
Tell us a bit about this whole underneath time. Like, what were you guys listening to, and what were you like? Okay, this is the skins we shed on this, and this is because it's super cinematic. Like, it's super filmic. I think there's so many textures to it. Like, Aaron, I was saying, my friend Aaron, he's like, I think you guys sent him some stuff to work on, which didn't get on the record, and he's fine with it. But he's like, you guys have like 30 tracks or something. Like, it's just absurd. Like, when you guys are making tunes, there's so much texture to it. Is that like a goal, or how does that work?
It's more than 30.
Yeah.
You don't want to know the number of how many tracks there are on underneath.
Yeah.
God. I mean, we really dug deep on that one, and I'm like in such a different place now than I was when we were writing it. I think all of us are, for sure. So it's even hard to kind of get myself back to like how we were thinking then. But it was just really trying to dig into our sound and ways to get electronics to be part of the music, and ways to make guitar sound like electronics sound like guitars and drums, and just pushing sonically everything to the absolute edge, and really just figuring out, a way to do that, blend this, digital sound with this, energy of our band, that the essence of our band that had been there that whole time, and really analyzing that about ourselves and figuring out like how we can make this into a modern version of ourselves. Basically, it's just kind of like ideas that were seeping into when we were doing Forever, but that we hadn't fully realized. And I think when we started doing it, and we started all really getting into the nitty gritty and learning how to do everything ourselves when it comes to the sounds and getting the sounds we wanted, and in the box and out of the box, and we just took it super far and went fully down, down that rabbit hole, basically. Yeah. So it was a monster. I mean, I think with the goal that we had in mind, we accomplished. And now, we have a different goal now, but at the time that's the goal that it was. And I'm very proud of that. And I think we were able to really, get some fucking visceral sounding shit on there. And that's very modern and but still has that feeling of being real. Like I obviously described as needing to have in music. It's didn't want it to feel, it doesn't feel like computery to me in a way that I think a lot of modern metal and rock and pop and everything is. I think it feels kind of is more of just like we were able to use those digital tools in a way that was, felt more natural to how we play music and how our sound is. And it's just kind of weaved in there better. So that was the goal anyways.
Yeah, it's a lot more interesting than a lot of bands who kind of go, this is a rock part, this is an electronic part, this is a rock part, and it's just like, dude, it's well,
it just feels unnatural.
What is the goal now? What are you guys working on? Because we know you're making music, it's just obvious. Sorry.
I mean, we're just writing. We're writing a lot. We write, as much as we can. I think we found this process that makes it so we can get ideas out super easily. So it's kind of just like trying to really push ourselves and focus on the songs and finding ways to have, really imaginative and creative production ideas, but also accomplishing the goal of keeping the essence of the song intact and having a flow and, just typical shit where, trying to push the boundaries of our sound and trying to find new influences and finding ways to bring those in natural ways and listening to music and talking about it. And I mean, I think, we've even just as a band learned to communicate a lot better than we did when we were younger, as expected. So, I think a lot of bands kind of crack under that kind of pressure, and there's definitely been many opportunities to crack, but I think we've learned and been really lucky in how close we are and how everyone in the band kind of has their weird shit, but then the next person knows how to deal with that weird shit. So it just works, and we're lucky, and we've learned how to communicate, and that communication verbally and as friends has helped us then take that to the music, and it just makes making better ideas easier and making more ideas and more songs and having more to choose from. And we definitely have a lot of goals, and awesome. We're just trying to accomplish those. So
did you ever make a movie?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, if we had 36 hours to each day, Code Orange would be like the craziest fucking thing ever. It'd be an empire. There's just only so many hours in the day,
I mean, that's fair play. I mean, what did the other members of the band brought after that kind of core group? Like what, and did you do you have initiation rituals? Like did you put them through their paces to kind of get into the
what you mean Dom? Dom's really the only one. I mean
but do you think did you put Dom
we put him through the fucking
I was gonna say
I mean he it was a while back, obviously. It was, but he started playing just kind of as like a body because Eric had moved to synth and we needed someone to physically play guitar so that we could have the sound of two guitars, and if we wanted to have two riffs we could tell him what to play. But then we kind of realized that he had something special, and that he had been in other bands before, and he became one of our best friends, and he clearly was kind of in love with it and in love with the band and music, and in the same way that we are. And I think that type of person does not come around a lot at all, and a person barely exists in this world. So finding him was just in our minds. We didn't really know fully yet, but it was like, of course he's going to be in this fucking band. So we just pushed him to learn. There's a lot of things you learn being in a band over many years of mistakes and what to do, what not to do, how to make shit work. And just we had to teach him all of that, and he had to learn all of that. He still learns a lot of that shit, but the core of it, he's an amazing guitar player, and he's a hard worker, and now he is just in this band just as an important member as any one of us. It's just we just each kind of have our different things that we do and focus on. And but I mean, everyone in this band's fully dedicated, and the five of us, and I think that's just what keeps us going, so
Well, I think okay, so I didn't actually give you warning on this, and I should have. 5 songs that changed your life. How shit is it to drop it on you like with absolute feeling? It's a little bit. Now I just realized I probably should have like said at the beginning. But yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll give you one
off
off
the
the top
top.
of my head. Firestorm changed
Yeah.
my life 100%. Probably. Damn, that's a freaking hard question.
It really is, and I think in future I'm going to drop it at the beginning, and you can reflect on it quietly in the background and come back to it. Yeah, it's a,
Can I tell you later?
yeah. You can.
You're like off screen.
No, listener, like some songs changed Reba's life, and they were good.
It's just so hard to pick 5. Like,
yeah.
God.
Yeah,
5 songs too, not just 5 bands.
Okay, what about 3 bands?
Think about it.
What about 3 bands?
3 bands. All right.
That's nice.
Really changed my life. Okay, let's just go in eras, I guess. Here we'll say Minor Threat being number 1 as a young boy, young girl. Then we go with Hatebreed.
Yep.
Just because why not? Hatebreed. There's others, but Hatebreed's the one for now. Hardcore era. And we're gonna go with Alice in Chains on number 3.
Excellent.
Metal era.
That's a solid thing. Okay, and like
that's a step, it's a process that makes sense.
That's the whole thing. I mean, dude, that's a pretty good cross section. I'd like to get them I'd like to get them in a room and to make something. I think getting Hatebreed, Alice in Chains, and Minor Threat.
You can throw Bruce Springsteen in there as something more.
I mean, that's
other spectrum.
So that's the super group that we've developed. It's Reba's life-changing super group.
Bruce.
I don't know what else. So you're a Bruce Springsteen guy. That's pretty great. Okay, no, the rest of this is a farce.
See, I've always thought he was cool,
shit.
but then in my current, like, recent last 2 years, I've just something about his personality. I was like, holy shit. And then I went back and listened again to everything, and it was like, it just all clicked.
Really?
And again, the timing, it's like I was way too angry and like pissed off before to really appreciate it for what it was. But now I just can't just have a new love, new love for it. It's great. But shit like that happens all the time. It just shit'll come hit me from over there, and I just won't see it coming. So that was one of them.
I feel like this whole show has really been building up to your love of Bruce Springsteen. Like, really, this is the core of it. And it took us a while to get here, but like, this is, I mean, dude, that guy plays for like 5 hours or something. Like he's 100, like,
and he seems to still have a great attitude.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll be so much more jaded. But I don't know what I'm not going to be. Yeah, I'm going to be fucked up. So kudos to him.
Just be sitting.
He's a bigger
down,
man.
Just be sitting down playing. Yeah, at that point, just chilling, stone cold chilling.
Probably.
Are you guys going to be together forever?
I don't know. Who knows? I hope not. No, I'm just kidding. But I will go crazy. But I don't know. I mean, fucking do it until it's not the right thing to do. We're not the type of people to not put our all into it. So it's like, if we ever got to the point where we couldn't put our all into it, then it's like, why would you do a half-ass version of you have a thing that you've loved your whole life that's been your identity? It would just be a cop-out. So we're doing it now, we love it, and we're putting every ounce of energy into it. So that's what's important. Can't see the future,
Well, it's exciting. Like, I think there's something weird. I think you and David Bowie share is like, I went to this Bowie museum thing that he toured while he was sick and no one knew about it. And you went, that guy took every idea he had all the way. And I feel like the thing that's really cool, and I think underneath really showcased with Code Orange, is you guys take ideas all the way. And I think I'm excited to see what other next ideas you guys take all the way. Because
we will, and I appreciate that.
It's important. Okay, cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening and or watching Revolver's Fan First podcast. This is Reba Meyers of Code Orange. Thank you for joining us. Yay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
You rock.